Hey guys, it's Kylie and Arabella, and I wanted to take a moment today to talk about how I received the diagnosis of autism. So, I had gotten out, so I've been kind of trying to socially fit in my whole life. I mimicked my mother and tried to do her body movements and everything before school every morning, starting from the time that I was very little, like toddler and on, but I still mimicked her exactly like at 10 years old. I was practicing her facial movements, her body movements, her voice, and I tried to care about things that other people cared about by listening to them talk and then repeating it back to them. I always knew that I was different in some way, and my friends were always like, Kylie, you do have special needs. And I was like, oh, I have cerebral palsy. They were like, no, Kylie, like, you don't get anything socially. And these were 12-year-olds, but the grown adults didn't see the autism in me and they told me to quit making it up. That's the kind of teachers I had. Quit making it up, like you're just looking for attention, that kind of thing. So I hid my autism and I would go and be a part of big social groups and just mimic what they did to fit in. And that worked for me, like, up until I graduated high school. Well, I got into a friendship that was very toxic for me, and I loved her. Like, I won't lie, I'm a lesbian. I fell in love with her, but she was very manipulative and threatening and just unkind, and I will talk about that in another video. But because of her, my autism symptoms started showing. I lost the mask completely because she would call me in the middle of the night and have me on the phone for 6 hours, then call me during the day and have me on the phone for like 8 hours, and I was never getting any sleep. And so the doctor said, okay, it's time to take you to the hospital, get you on psych meds, everything else. It was so bad that I was hallucinating from lack of sleep. I do not have schizophrenia, but that was my only instance, and that's because I had insomnia. So they called it psychosis. So fast forward 2 years later, they've tested for schizophrenia, bipolar, um, and a bunch of other stuff. I do not have schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. They've told me over and over that is not the case. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and then they were like, okay, there's more than PTSD there because you act like a child, like you age regress like a lot, and you don't know social cues, and you can't take loud noises and bright lights and people, and you have no filter when you say things. And they were, telling me how I get very hyper fixated on different interests and stuff, like these baby dolls. Like, I will think about them and nothing else, like, all day. And they were like, and you melt down and freak out if somebody is upsetting you and it looks, like a tantrum. But long story short, basically what they did is they did an assessment for autism 2 years later, because I had been to hospital after hospital, and they all said, they were like, we see the autism. We see the autism right now. You're very autistic, and you stim, you do all these things. They're like, that was high. They were like, you were the master of masking because you hid that for 20 some years, fooled your own mother and the rest of us. So, like, you masked so good it didn't get diagnosed as a child. But the reason why this girl was able to manipulate you with things that and the other neurotypical friends weren't manipulated is because you have autism, because you don't pick up social cues, because you think you have a certain naivete where you think everybody is nice, and you don't understand, like a lot of people, like, it's right from wrong. Like, you have a very non-gray area moral compass. And they assessed all of that, and long story short, they were like, you have autism. And so I'm still undergoing psych testing for other things, but that's how I got diagnosed with autism 2 years ago. Is that was the last thing they tested for, and I scored like really out of the park, and it was just insane. And they were like, they just couldn't believe it. And so I got diagnosed 2 years ago because I went to Pathlight in Seattle, Washington, which is a month long hospital stay. It's private, and they did DBT. And the DBT wasn't working for me. Like, I had meltdowns every day. And they were like, okay, we don't know how to deal with autism, but that's what you have. And then the hospital before that was just to get me on meds. I was drooling and foaming at the mouth the first time I went to a hospital because they put me on risperidone, which was the wrong med. I'm on Seroquel now. So I went to that hospital first where I was foaming at the mouth. Then I went to the hospital at Pathlight where it was private and they couldn't really do a whole lot to help me, but they gave me a few skills. And then I went to the hospital that I went to the first time a couple months ago because I self-harmed, and they were like, all your symptoms, I see the autism, it's obvious. So every hospital I went to agreed that I had autism, and that is how I was diagnosed with autism at 24 years old. So I had my CP diagnosed when I was 2, so they took that into account and everything else. But that is how I was diagnosed with autism. I will do how I got diagnosed with CP in another video for you guys because it's a long story. But yeah, that's the story of how I got diagnosed with autism.